It all started with silence. Not the silence of peace, but that of conspiracy. A dark room in the heart of Rome. Julius Caesar, his eyes fixed on a blood-stained map, studied the next steps of the war. On the other side of the table, motionless as a living statue, was the one he once called his brother in arms. A venerated, loyal, faithful general. Or so it seemed. What Caesar did not know was that behind that still gaze lurked the spark of an ancient ambition, and that this spark was about to set the empire ablaze. Rome was at its peak, but behind the golden columns of the Senate and the triumphal feasts, the ground trembled. The Republic was bleeding from within. Caesar accumulated powers, defied the senators, and marched like a king in a world that still claimed to be free. Her eyes were on him, but the real danger was next door, smiling, marching beside him, ready to nail the betrayal at the right moment. Rome was living days of splendor and tension. The statues of the gods still received offerings. The generals paraded in a triumphal car. But behind the scenes, the game was different. Alliances, conspiracies, promises whispered between columns. Julius Caesar was no longer just a name. He became an entity, owner of provinces, loyal to himself, crossing the Rubicon with the coldness of someone who had already decided that the world needed a new master. And in the midst of this whirlwind of power, there was a man. A general who walked between the Senate and the battlefield with the dexterity of a leopard, too smart to just be a soldier, too proud to serve eternally. He knew the secrets of Rome. He knew how the invisible currents of power were pulled. And as everyone looked at Caesar, he watched behind the scenes, measuring every step, every weakness, every opportunity. If you're already feeling the weight of the decisions that shaped Rome, imagine what's yet to come. This channel reveals what the books don't tell, the backstage of glory, the shadows of power, the truths that history has tried to bury. So if you want to continue exploring the hidden secrets of the empire, like it now, it shows that this type of content deserves to be revealed to more people. And if you haven't signed up yet, be part of the legion that is not satisfied with the official version. Click the sign up button and activate the bell, because in the next few minutes, the betrayal will become visible, and Rome's fate will never be the same. He didn't need to shout to be obeyed. He did not beg applause. His presence alone made the soldiers straighten their postures, the officers murmur faster orders, and even the senators measure their words better. His name was feared on the battlefields and whispered in the halls of power. They called him the other Lion of Rome. Because if Caesar was the mind of the empire, he was the fist. It was in the campaigns of Gaul that his legend began to take shape. With each victory, his name was engraved on shields, in the sand, and in the hearts of the legions. And Caesar, enchanted by his competence, gave him more responsibilities, more territories, more honor. But along with the glory was born something invisible, a silent seed of comparison, of envy disguised as loyalty. After all, how many times is a soldier exalted to the point of thinking that he can be more than his right-hand man? And how many times does the arm not want to be the head? They shared more than war strategies. They shared silences, commanding looks, decisions that shaped the destiny of Rome. It was said that Caesar trusted this general so much that he would never dare to doubt him, even if everyone around him aroused suspicion. He was like an undeclared son, a reflection of himself in armor, sword, and ambition. They slept under the same roof in campaigns, toasted together after victories. And in many councils, when Caesar could not be, it was he who spoke on her behalf. That confidence was dangerous gold, valuable, but too malleable under the heat of power. And the higher Caesar rose, the more the general accompanied him. The problem? When two men walk side by side for too long, the world begins to ask, Which of the two really leads? The answer was written between the lines of each gesture, each order given, each shot whispered in the half-light. And the general, who knew Caesar's dreams and fears like no one else, began to chart his own path on the same trail that he once swore to protect. Caesar crossed the Rubicon, and there was no turning back. The gesture that seemed daring in the eyes of the crowd, it was, behind the scenes, a declaration of war against the Republic itself. The senators shuddered. The Roman old guard saw their order crumble. And among the generals, the one who knew him best began to wonder, Caesar is still the liberator, or has he already become the tyrant? The disillusionment came not from a single act, but from many. The accumulation of power, the growing contempt for the Senate, the symbolic crowns that were beginning to surround his head, as if Rome needed a king. And the general, once an accomplice, now found himself divided. He would fight against what he considered the decadence of Rome, or would he become just another silent soldier in the midst of the imperial spectacle? And it was in this abyss between loyalty and conviction that he made his choice, not with shouting, not with blood, but with a cold decision. If Caesar didn't stop, he would. And from that moment on, the friend became an adversary. The right arm became a shadow, and the throne of Rome was dangerously within reach of his hands. While Caesar discoursed on the fate of Rome, his general laid another plan in the shadows. There were no visible daggers, no open letters. There were meetings in dark, corridors packed sealed in glances and whispered promises between sips of wine. The Senate, which feared Caesar, saw in this man an alternative, perhaps dangerous, but not yet crowned. And the general knew it. It fed the fear of some and the hope of others. He played on both sides until the last moment. He didn't have to lead an entire army. He just had to bend the right men. Border commandos, resentful senators, patricians who hated to see Caesar as big as a king. In a short time, the network was assembled. The Rome that smiled at Caesar by day, whispered betrayals by night. And the scariest thing, Caesar did not suspect it. Trust still blinded him. He continued to treat the general as a faithful ally. But every order he received was distorted. Every decision I made favored hidden plans. He didn't wield a dagger, but every step he took was a disguised move. It was on an ordinary day. Nothing in the air indicated that the history of Rome was about to change. But Caesar's eyes, ever watching, finally saw a crossed look, an order poorly complied with, a suspicious movement between troops that he himself had delegated to his general. Trust, which for so long had been a shield, now became a sail. And when he pulled the blindfold, saw the blade already in the air, the tension between them needed no words. The silence said it all. Caesar confronted him, not with fury, but with something worse. Disappointment. Like someone who sees his own son turn against his father. But the general did not back down. He did not ask for forgiveness. He did not deny it. He believed in his mission. He believed he was saving Rome, even if he had to destroy the man who raised it. Orders were given, troops divided. The whole of Rome went into a state of shock. It was no longer about who was right, but who had more power. And on that day, the war wasn't just military, it was spiritual, moral, and historical. The traitor had come out of the shadows, and Caesar, he was surrounded by ghosts that he himself created. Rome was in internal ruins. The legions were divided. The voices of the people were confused between loyalty and fear. Many were already calling the general the new Caesar. The minted coins began to circulate with his face. Entire regions recognized him as a legitimate leader. He no longer needed to conspire. Now he marched to applause, even if timid, even if for convenience. Power was at hand. He controlled routes, dominated strategic provinces, and the Senate, weakened, began to bow. It was as if fate was a single step away from final consecration. But Rome, unpredictable as ever, decided to test the traitor's soul. Allies began to retreat. Some realized that they were exchanging one tyrant for another. Others feared that by crowning him, they were only changing the face of the same ambition. And the people hesitated. The shout of acclamation did not come. The crown was in the air, suspended without hands to hold it. He had it all, minus complete acceptance. The victory that seemed certain became a doubt. The throne slipped through his fingers like wet sand. And in that instant, the man who almost took over the world, he realized that the empire is not conquered only with a sword. Brutal contrast between rise and ruin. A melancholy and almost poetic tone surrounds this part, with an emphasis on loneliness, oblivion, and Rome's silent punishment. There was no parade, there was no public trial, there was not even a protest. His fall was silent, as the beginning of his ascension. One by one, those who supported him turned their faces away. The soldiers who once shouted his name now swore allegiance to another. The promises disappeared, the alliances evaporated, and the general, who for a moment had the empire at his feet, walked alone. Rome did not need to kill him. She had a worse punishment: erasure. His name was crossed out of the records. The statues were never erected. His achievements began to be attributed to others. It was as if he had never existed, a ghost in life, a faint echo. Perhaps he died in exile, perhaps in silence, in some distant village, watching the sunset over a Rome that no longer recognized him, not for lack of merit, but because of a fatal mistake, having wanted to be emperor by means of treason. Because Rome, even in its corruption, still knew how to distinguish between a leader and a usurper. And the man who dared to defy Caesar, he ended up devoured by the same system he tried to dominate. Rome was shaped by powerful men, but destroyed by its own ambitions. And this general, who walked side by side with Caesar, who conquered territories, who might have gone down in the books as a hero, chose the darker path. Not for lack of courage, but for the wrong choice of the moment. He was not the first, and it won't be the last. History is full of names that shone brightly, and they quickly faded. Betrayal is not just a blade in the heart of another. It is a wound in the very soul. And the throne that is conquered with daggers, it never offers rest. Just wait. Today, no one erects statues for him. No street bears his name. But his story persists, like a somber whisper among the pillars of Rome. A reminder that it is not power that defines man, but the path he chooses to reach it. Because even the most brilliant generals, they can fall like forgotten shadows when they decide to betray the trust that has lifted them up. If this part of the story has already made you see Rome with different eyes, imagine what is still behind the curtains that we will raise together. Here, every detail, every secret, and every betrayal is delivered with precision to those who seek more than simple curiosity, to those who want to be transformed by the truth behind the myth. So, if this content hooked you, taught you something new, or made you feel part of this journey, give back now with a like. It helps us maintain that level of depth in each new episode. And if you want to continue this transformation, subscribe to the channel now, because those who walk with knowledge, it never comes back the same.